Okay, so I'm Tim Orling. I work for Intel Software and Services Group in the Open Source Technology Center, and I've been working on real-time for the last year, real-time Linux, and now I'm back to Yocto project again. I'm a core developer of a lot of the stuff in Yocto project. So we're going to talk about Devtool. You've seen a little bit about the extensible SDK and Devtool already, but this tool came out of years of realizing that there was too much stuff that was manual and tedious, and it really was bugging people. So we created this tool to improve the workflow. So basically, the main point is that it's a tool to automate, or take out all these tedious hand done steps that we did in the past. And we're going to go into the eSDK even more in the afternoon session. So the extensible SDK, for those of you that are in much larger work groups, if it's not just you working on your own, but you're working with, you're a consultant and you're working with a company, or you are the only build engineer or build system person for your company, and you've got lots and lots of application people, that's the model we're going to talk about for the eSDK this afternoon. And actually, I'm going to be using Henry's slides, who's here today. So the other thing that I worked on in the Yocto project is crops, which was the Docker containers to enable you to use all of the wonders of Yocto project and Open Embedded, but in Docker on Mac and Windows. So if you are one of those people who has no choice but to use a Mac or Windows machine and you're tired of the VMs, we want you to go and use crops. So just for I'm not really going to cover it today unless we have extra time, but just for reference, I put in some links there to go check out. Okay. So what kind of things does Devtool support in terms of adding? And in this session, I'm thinking Devtool for bit-baked usage. Okay, that's what this session's about. The afternoon session is going to be Devtool for application developers. So it knows about auto tools, or CMake, or QMake, and plain make files. It also knows about out-of-tree kernel modules, as you just saw with Merrick's talk. You can even do binary packages with the -B option. It knows about Node.js as of Krogoth, and it's fairly good about Python modules with setup tools and dist-utils, but I will give it the caveat that it's only Python 2 right now. That's on our list to get Python 3 supported. Also, I'm a maintainer of the MetaPython layer and Open Embedded, and there's a whole bunch of changes that we have introduced that Devtool's not caught up to yet, but there's a bunch of improvements to come there.
Tim,
yes?
I mean, a heckler, you missed one. There's useful roast now. So.
Of course, because this is last year's slides, so we'll edit that. Thank you. Okay. And I did know about that, but I forgot it. Thank you. So let's just go over kind of an example workflow of what the Devtool bit-baked, kind of traditional build engineer, situation is going to be. So if we add a new recipe, we just call it, we say Devtool add, and then what that does is it goes ahead and creates a layer. So one of the things that Yocto project brought that Open Embedded Classic didn't have was all the layer stuff, right? What I want to get across to you guys is make sure that you are using layers for isolating and making yourself more modular all the time, right? And in order to do that and reinforce that, that's what Devtool is actually going to do, is go ahead and create this workspace layer in your build directory. And that's going to have recipes and source code and other things in it. So you do Devtool add, and you want to build it, so that's Devtool build. Then you want to maybe deploy to target. So Devtool build made your binary. You can actually do Devtool deploy target and deploy it to QEMU or even deploy it to hardware. So it will do it with SSH or a couple other techniques, which I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's obviously there's a lot of ways of deploying to target, JTAG and things like that. So there's other things that maybe it doesn't support, but for sure SSH works. So once you've done that, you're going to now go into your kind of testing phase, right? Sanity check that what you did works. So you can go in, run QEMU, actually run the command, make sure it works, or you've got unit testing or something like that you're going to add to it. Collect your issues, figure out what's wrong, go back and edit it. So Devtool edit recipe saves you from having to remember where the heck that recipe is in your tree. So it just knows, it already knows where it put it or where it was. It already parsed with bitbake, right? The first thing bitbake does, parse all the metadata. So Devtool knows about all that stuff. So this just saves you some time. So then you want to finalize things by merging your recipe into your layer. And so we do Devtool finish because this workspace layer is sandbox, okay, temporary. Do something, get done with it, get out of it, right? It's like a feature branch in Git, right? So it's only intended to be there for the temporary time when you're working on it, and then get the heck out of it and finish. So where are we? Okay, so if we look at the what the workspace is, right? Like I said, it's a layer. Anybody that was at EL would know about this already. So it's going to have a README file, conf directory, and the layer.conf, right? So it's a layer. If we were to add a recipe like hello from GNU, what it's going to do as soon as we do that is it's going to now add an appends and recipes and a sources directory. So any kind of DB appends are going to go into the appends. In recipes, it's going to do the typical thing where it's going to create a hello folder with the hello recipe in it. But it also went ahead and downloaded the tarball, created a source, or unpacked it in the source directory. It created a git. It was a tarball. It didn't have git already, but it created a git in there because now that recipe or that folder is now actually a Git repo that you can now make changes to. So it's going to do quilt and patch stuff for you. And it actually went and it looked at what did it unpack. It's going to go look at it. And in this case, it sees that there's a makefile.am. So it knows that's AutoTools. Okay. So now it's going to inherit AutoTools. It's going to create the recipe for you. And that's what generated the hello recipe in this case. So how is it doing this? Again, it knows about the parsed metadata that happened when bitbake first ran, right? And some people are kind of annoyed by that time when it first parses, but don't be annoyed because it just gave you all of this. The other part is if you've already built some packages, it knows a lot more about dependencies because of built package data than just parsed data. And so now, if you've already built packages, it's going to know a lot more about what to put into to the recipe. So, wish I didn't have to click through so many times. So we're going to go over a development cycle of creating a new recipe. We're going to deploy, edit, build it, and everything. We're going to then go and look at the another tool or another commonly used part of Devtool, which is modifying an existing recipe. And then we're going to look at layer maintenance, upgrading a recipe. Okay, so I want to stress that the built-in help for Devtool is really, really great. So it's self-documented. So Devtool --help is going to give you a ton of information. So if we look at, kind of working with the recipe, the main things we're going to be doing today is add, modify, upgrade. But also we've got information about how things are, so status and search. We can also have some functional things like building and editing and configuring, updating. There's also reset. So if you if you had started doing something and you realized this isn't working, or for whatever reason you just want to kind of get out of the state you're in with Devtool, if you just do Devtool reset on that package, it'll change that all and make it go away. And then testing changes, so you can deploy to target, undeploy, and you can also build an image from Devtool. So it's basically doing everything that BitBake can do plus more, and just kind of putting it in a convenient place. And the advanced stuff is, as I showed earlier, you can actually create a workspace. You don't need to do that. Just Devtool Add is going to create a workspace for you, but you can create a different workspace if you wanted to. You can do Devtool extract, so it'll just extract the sources but not do anything else to it. And then you can do Devtool sync in case you've worked in a different space and forgot about it. You can sync to that stuff. So what we're going to do now is the first activity. So as you are hearing the mantra, make sure you're in a clean space. So there's actually some environment variables that you can get rid of that to make you not have to do this clean space thing, but I didn't have time to write them all out to share it today. So you don't strictly have to do this, but it's easier. So what we're going to do is we're going to source Pocky, and I always have a themed build directory. I don't just use the raw build. So in this case, I'm just doing build Devtool. There's nothing magic about it. I'm just calling it that because this session's about Devtool. That's probably too small to read for you guys, isn't it? So sorry about that. So the next thing we want to do, so what's in your source directory or your scratch directory is we just cloned Pocky from upstream. We didn't do anything special. And so the first thing I want to do is take advantage of the fact that there's already downloads, so you don't have to re-download anything. And so you just kind of copy and paste this setting, and then, or just go in and edit, whichever you're comfortable with. But we basically just want to replace this Topter downloads with Scratch downloads. And then, even more important, we want to get the shared state, the S state. And again, I'm very comfortable with sed, so I do all the stuff with sed, but if you just want to go in and edit it, that works just the same. So the default in Pocky is going to be x86, QEMU x86, so you want to make sure that you're building for QEMU ARM. So uncomment the line in the file or set it. And then I threw this in there just because we know that we're creating test. Okay, I don't know what happened there. We know that we're creating a ton of data. Gigabytes of data could be getting created. Even it could be like 100 gigabytes of data in a build if you're doing something complicated. So one of the ways to save your poor laptop or your poor desktop machine that's kind of old is this RM work. And what that actually does, if possible, it does everything in RAM and doesn't write anything to disk. So it will eventually end up having to do swap files out to disk, but it won't write any of your work to disk. And so you can save a heck of a lot of disk space. So I just want to throw that in there just as kind of a best practices thing. You guys don't need to do it because these VMs are very capable of running everything. So again, I'm trying to just reinforce best practices. So let's just push V up to the scratch layer directory, and we're going to create a new layer. So there used to be another tool called Yocto layer that's now gone in master, so we're not going to muddy it up with multiple tools. So it's just make layers, create a layer, and then give it a name. We can use the classic meta foo. So using that same tool, we're going to now add that layer that we just created into our VB layers file. And now we're ready to go on to the next step. So how's everybody doing so far? I want to make sure I'm not going too fast or too slow. But I hear typing, so I think people are typing. Is anybody hung up in any place so far or confused by anything? Or everybody's just zooming ahead and having fun? So, okay. So in the past, we haven't had such an awesome VM as what you guys have. So you guys actually already have S-state and downloads and everything done for you to really save a bunch of time. But just in case if you hadn't already built, you could go build core image minimal, and you can do it now. It'll be super fast. But because of the fact that we changed that S-state cache variable, it should be very quick. It's a good test for that. So the way you know just one second. The way you know that your S-state cache is working, or if you have an S-state mirror, and that's the way you know that's working, is all of those tasks that are running, fetching and everything. You should see everything just say set scene. Thank you. Woo. I've not had a lot of sleep recently, so brain is dead. So you should see lots and lots of set scene tasks, and they should be going by very, very, very quickly. If you don't see those, then that means your configuration wasn't right. And double check your typos and stuff in your local.conf. Okay, so we're going to add our new recipe, and in this case, I'm going to go grab Nano. So Nano's actually in MetaOpen embedded. Maybe we'll go do that with the flow later. We're just going to go ahead and go download this tarball. And luckily, these VMs being in the cloud, we're not at the mercy of Wi-Fi, so the 10 gigabit Ethernet is awesome. So once we've done that, it's going to run bitbake, so you'll see some stuff go by in bitbake. And since we didn't tell it to put the workspace anywhere else, if you go in the LS workspace, find workspace recipes, whatever. If you just kind of go in there and poke around and look at what was created, you'll see that. Hold on a second. You'll just see that there's a recipes folder, recipe/nano folder that has a recipe in it at that version, and then there's going to be sources. And if you look in the sources directory, you're going to see tons of stuff. So I forgot the other question. So
I just wondered if there's an advantage to using Devtool build image instead of just the normal bitbake.
No.
No.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. There's certain circumstances where it's going to be a little bit better to have to do it with Devtool. That would especially be the case if you were actually editing image recipes in the Devtool workspace, because bitbake might be in a situation where it didn't know about it, but it really is just a convenience factor. Yeah. And then once you're in that source, so remember we just downloaded a tarball, but once you're in that source directory, go ahead and do git log, and you should see that it did like an initial commit, and that's going to let you, be able to go in and make changes to it and see the changes. So So I'm not going to try to run the demo myself live because I'm pretty sure this demo works because it's been through about 4 rounds. So I'm just going to kind of let you guys work through and do it on your own machines. Because if I start trying to go back and forth between terminal and slides, we'll have the wonderful fun of the demo gods, as we say. Yeah.
How does it know the dependencies for
It basically went and looked at the fact that there's this, makefile.am and things like that. It's going to only figure out a few things in this case. It doesn't know a whole lot about it. So, full disclosure, I picked Nano for a reason. Okay, it's very, very simple. I know it works. So I'm grabbing everything I'm doing today. I'm intentionally grabbing stuff that I know dang well is going to work, so that we don't have to stumble around it. So so it's only as smart as it can be. Yeah. So in the case of Python, it knows a lot more because it can go and query the setup pi. But in the case of makefiles, it's just going to do what it can. I think it probably actually does look at the configure.ac or something like that. It does actually figure a few things out, but I don't remember off the top of my head anymore. Okay, so now we're ready to build it. So you should be able to do big nano, but you can do Devtool build nano. And Devtool, the other benefit now, this is where the other benefit of using Devtool in your workflow is Devtool is already going to have BB appended, or have added this to your core image. So now if you go and build core image minimal, it's already going to have nano in it. And again, this is just trying to really, really speed up your workflow. So if you've been doing traditional bit-bake work and you're not using Devtool, force yourself to start just using Devtool because it's going to save you minutes and minutes every day, and it turns into hours. Okay, so hopefully that built fairly quickly and everything was fine. Just a slight difference from what we showed earlier on running QEMU. If you add this slurp, this means use user space networking instead of the tap devices that needed sudo or root privileges. Then we're doing no graphic because we don't want it to bring up the graphical window. You can actually you can drop the QEMU ARM part, but I just wanted to put that in there to let you know that if you have more than one arch built in your build space, you can switch back and forth between the two. There's one other thing that I commonly use because I work for Intel, I'm usually doing x86 and x86-64 machines. On those kind of machines, you can also put KVM on the end, and the QEMU boots a lot faster, but unfortunately that doesn't work on cross-compiled stuff like QEMU ARM. So you should be able to run it, and we should see the nano editor come up at version 2.7.4. I think is what we downloaded, right? So you should be able to see that. And then play around with it, do whatever. But we can control X to exit nano and keep going on. You can look at what was installed. So what do you think, where do you think it should have gone, right? It should have gone into user bin. So you should see nano in user bin. Is everything going so good so far for folks? Since I'm not actually running it myself, I want to make sure I'm not going too quick. So if you're having any issues, please just stop me immediately because I don't want to blow past things. You guys are quiet. All right. Okay, so then as you did earlier, you would do Control-A-X to exit QEMU. So for about 3 years of using QEMU, my technique was, exit the terminal and come back because I didn't know about Control AX. So that's a really good one to remember. Okay, so I'm just trying to go over that workflow that I did earlier. So we created that meta-foo layer because somehow this mic is not working. Okay, so we created that meta-foo layer because I intentionally wanted us to already have a place where we could put this recipe. So if you do Devtool finish, nano, and then we need the actual path to the layer that it's going to. Okay, so it's .meta-foo. And then the last thing we need to do, when you did that, it just warned you that it has finished it, put that recipe into that layer, but it's telling you it didn't clean up the sources directory. So I'm going to go ahead and have you remove that source because we're going to come back and do something with it later. And it'll get in the way later. So if you think about what you just did, okay, this is your typical workflow of adding a recipe, right? And notice that we happen to download a tarball, but guess what else? It knows about Git. So if you, inside your company, have an application in a Git repo, you just did, Devtool add Git Url, right? And now you just create a recipe for your own stuff. Okay, it's really, really easy. So please go and use this workflow when you get back home. So I forgot about the fact that Devtool already adds it to the image, but if we weren't going to keep using Devtool, one thing that I very, very commonly do in local.conf is I add to the core image extra install variable, I add all the stuff that I'm testing or that I'm working with. Lots and lots of people out there use image install as a variable, and that only works really well in an image recipe. If you're doing anything that's based on core base, so core image minimal, those kind of things, then you need to use this core image extra install. And if you do that in your local.conf, it's almost always going to work. So I never use image install anymore, except in image recipes. And profit. So you could probably have written that recipe in 15 minutes or half an hour, tops. You just did it in just a few seconds. So now we're going to go to the next thing. We're going to do modifying the recipe. So just sanity check that you're still on the right spot. And just for grins, I'm going to reinforce what we just learned. We're going to add another recipe because I'm trying to get you to, I really want you to go use this all the time, every day. This should be your go-to tool constantly. Try to break your old habits because you're going to save time, and I want you to have more time to make more money doing other things. So now we're going to go get the Hello World from GNU, and this is an Auto Tools project. So we're going to Devtool add, Devtool build image, run QEMU, and hello, and that should give us Hello World. And again, this is working really fast like this because it's an Auto Tools package and it knew all about it. I will give you the caveat that I know it's going to barf on you the first time it builds. Okay, I know that. Just run it again. Trust me, it's fine. There's some specific thing that changed in Auto Tools over the years, and we haven't quite caught up to it in core. And I keep teaching this exact same thing and keep giving this caveat every time, and I need to go back and fix it. But okay, so just again, sanity check, double check you're in the right spot. Whoops. Oh, that's weird. Okay. Okay, I added extra material in here, so I doubled myself up, but let's just go ahead and go to the bottom of this and make sure we publish. Devtool finish, hello now, and then remove that hello, or hello. Remove that source. And the reason I'm removing that source is because when we do Devtool modify, it's going to go and say, hey, I'm going to go untar this into the source directory. But the source directory is already there, and I don't know whether or not that's okay. So danger, 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 right? So you don't want that. So just get rid of it, and then we'll come back and do it. So now we're going to actually modify it. Unfortunately, well, or fortunately, it's enforcing Git usage. And first thing we got to do is you haven't set up your Git info yet, so we got to identify ourselves with Git. Okay, so then we're going to do Devtool modify. And again, I'm very comfortable with push D and sed, so I'm doing it that way. So all we want to do is we want to make it a little bit more interesting. Just change hello world to hello Portland, and then we're going to go ahead and if you do git log, you're going to see there's nothing there. It didn't auto commit for you, right? So again, it's not going to do stuff that's really, really dangerous. It's going to, Devtool is going to let you do that yourself. But if you go in then and git commit M or git commit M-S if you want to do signed off by. And now if you just go in and go back and build our image and run it again, you should now see that your change is in there. I'm missing a git add, thank you. Yes, sorry. Right after git log, do git add. Or you could have done git commit -a-m.
What slide is that? 16?
And then you caught the duplication of the slide a couple slides before that, David. I had some material duplicated. Okay, so pop D to get back up to where we were before into the build directory, Devtool finish, remove the source, wash, rinse, repeat. And now let's just kind of go double check what we changed, just to kind of sanity check what's going on. So if we go and we look at the hello recipe, you'll see that you'll see what it auto-generated for you. And there's a whole bunch of comments and things in there, right? So there's a bunch of stuff you need. It's just sort of a template so that you can go in and work in that space that you're going to probably delete a lot of that stuff. But what it did is actually created a BB append. So remember, we just went and we git cloned, and we did a git add and we did a git commit. And so it now knows how to do a patch, right? So what it should have in the BB append should be a patch to make that change from hello world to hello Portland. And so there's the patch that it's going to put in for us. And again, we'll go and clean up. And profit. Okay, so we're getting really close to lunch. Kathy, how closer to lunch are we?
11:45 actually, because other class.
Awesome. Okay, that'll be perfect. Yeah. So we don't have a whole lot more to cover. We're just going to do upgrade now. So, okay. We don't have to do this part. I just wanted to let you know that what we just did with Nano is actually, I believe, the version that's in upstream, Meta Open Embedded. So if you wanted to do this, you know, ignore that whole thing where we did the add and go back and do it a different way. Because of the VMs that we're using are super, super fast, you can go ahead and do this, you know, clone and so on. So if you want to do this, you might want to remove the Nano recipe from MetaFood. But so you could, you know, just go clone, add the layer, and keep going. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do Devtool upgrade. So this is the, you know, layer maintainer workflow, or you've got a new release of some tool in your company, and right now Devtool still needs to know the specific version you're going to update to. I know there's been some work recently that where you don't even have to add that version, and it'll actually go out and use a task that's, or a tool that's part of what's called the auto upgrade helper. They're going to try to talk about this afternoon, where it actually goes, looks at a URL for what you downloaded, and it parses what version is available there, and actually should be able to update it automatically. But so we're just going to update to the latest version of Nano. And if we go and look at what happened, if you're doing the Meta OE version, it happens that there's an include file and a 2.904. So one of the reasons why I went ahead and left this extra stuff in here is the include file is where you want to put the stuff that doesn't change, and the version file is where you want to put the stuff that is specific to the version. And this helps you not continually be committing stuff that is static. So basically, it's just the source URI is what's changing in the 2.9.4 file here. There's a little bit of change in this behavior when we look at Python recipes. So if you look at the MetaPython layer, we have a little bit different workflow in that, but this is a typical way to do it. And if you look at what we did specifically, there should just be a 2.9.4 DD recipe. So it should have gotten rid of the 274 and gone to the 294. And if you were to look at the at that recipe, you should just see that it basically changed the source URI. So now we can go ahead and Devtool build image. And again, to the question earlier, the benefit here is that Devtool would have already added it into your core image minimal, and you didn't have to do the core image extra install variable change that we did earlier.
Where does it do that?
I forget. It either does a image BB append, or it puts it into the layer conf. Because I know it doesn't do it in your local.conf. Do you remember where the change? Because where is Devtool adding the recipe so that it knows about it when you do build image?
It depends if you're using it in the SDK or if you're using it from BitBake.
We're in the BitBake mode right now.
So if you're in the environment, it's going to create a workspace folder and it's going to put the image in there. But when you run Devtool finish, that's where it'll put it into your layer if it goes up.
So if we poke around in workspace, we should find it. So, you know, thank you for
So what it's doing is
asking.
under BB layers, if you look at your BB layers file, it's added the workspace into the BB layers and added a layer. So anything it throws in there, any recipes are going to get picked up. So it's not
Yeah.
automatically added to the image.
So I think it's doing a core image BB append, but I don't remember for sure. I'll go through that and double check it after we're done, and we can go over it later. And I'll try to remember to add that to the slides. So. Okay, so again, I'm repeating myself a whole bunch today, and the reason is I'm trying to drill this into you, what this workflow is, so you see that there's just a handful of steps. They're very, very simple. It's really, really easy to remember to do these once you've done them a few times. and you're going to save yourself, hundreds and hundreds of dollars of your time a day, and you're going to get more and more profitable because of this. And you're going to have, you're going to be way more efficient. So you really need to use this tool as much as you can. And if stuff isn't working, file bugs. Tell us it's not working for something, and we'll add to that and fix it. What's the problem?
It's giving me fetcher errors.
Okay, sorry, I thought that was fixed.
Now, if I do it up now.
Okay, so the fetcher error is something I know about, and in my old version of the slides, I actually had the hack to fix it, and I forgot to. Oh, I know why. Okay, I needed that hack back in there again. So, let me just.
It's basically saying 404 doesn't exist. So is that specific, the old slide and the specific pieces there?
Yeah, it's a problem with the source URI URL in the recipe that we first created. So sorry, I forgot about that. I thought I had fixed that. So when I corrected the slides earlier, I kind of skipped over that part. So. So I'm pulling up, okay, so this is the fix from before. Okay, so you'll have to change this just slightly. So basically the problem is if you look at in the recipe that was created, it's got an issue with the source URI. So you need to change the 2.7 to actually 2.9 in this case, not 2.8. So just make that change right there. And that's just because the reason for that is because the URL that we used to get the tarball had a version specific thing in it, right? And Devtool isn't smart enough to say, hey, this v2.7 is, part of the variable for the package and so on. So it's a good time to cover the fact that there is a bug open to allow you to actually change the fetch URL. And this will now be high on my list again as I'm going back to Yocto project. So we'll be able to fix that. So sorry about that confusion. Okay. So hopefully that corrected that problem. Sorry about that. And we'll go ahead and I'll inject that back into the slides so that the published ones will be the proper. So let's go ahead and I'm just wrapping up now. This is the last slide. So, oops. Okay, so just a few things so you can go out there and look at this later on. So I think, I'm really proud of the Yocto project documentation. So please go out and look at the documentation and use it, and then file bugs when you find things that are wrong. But, we're really trying to have everybody's first go-to thing to be go to the documentation and look for things and search for what you need there, right? So if what you needed isn't covered in our documentation, let us know so that we add it. But we really want that documentation to make things work. So you can go back to the beginning of when Devtool was created and see Paul Eggleton, who's the original author of all this stuff. See what he presented when we first covered that at ELC 3 years ago now. There's a great tutorial by our friend Trevor Warner, who is a very active community member. Unfortunately, couldn't travel here this year, but he's got a blog about or a tutorial about this. There's a different Dev Day presentation about ESDK workflow. Last year we didn't teach ESDK in the afternoon. This year we are going to do that. So I'm going to be covering a little bit different content than what Sean has. I'm actually going to be covering, well, there's another presentation from ELC last year from Henry Brees that I'll give you guys the link to that this afternoon. And then if you want to see almost exactly what we went over today, with everything being done, or you need to share it with your coworkers. I gave the same, almost exactly the same material last year at ELC, and I did video capture of all of my console stuff, and so everything I did, it's literally blow by blow, everything done in that presentation. You can go watch it on YouTube. So. Okay, so we got about 5 minutes before lunch is supposed to be ready, but I'll take kind of any questions you guys have or anything, or we can play around with more stuff, or we can just go take a break, decompress for a moment.
Did every command you do in that class also work in the ESDK?
So everything will work in the ESDK, yes. I didn't do anything. Yeah, there's nothing here that I did that would be weird in the SDK. So if you went back to what David presented from Merrick earlier, when you were in the ESDK mode, all of this should have worked exactly the same there. Yeah. Basically, ESDK Devtool mode adds more stuff that BitBake mode doesn't have. So. We'll go over those differences a little bit more this afternoon. Any other questions or?
What's your favorite feature?
My favorite feature is Devtool upgrade, but actually I now use the auto upgrade helper. So hopefully I'll have some time to cram that into this afternoon, or I'll just bring up a job that I'm running on my server back in Jones Farm. So as a layer maintainer, one of the problems is what I gave my talk on earlier, is that upstream doesn't stop moving. And so things are constantly changing, right? So here we just did an upgrade to Nano because what's in MetaOpen Embedded is old. So there's a new tool called Auto Upgrade Helper, or it's not new, but there's a tool called Auto Upgrade Helper which was recently modified to use Devtool, and it actually runs Devtool Upgrade. And it uses also, there's a task called -check package, which if you've enabled distro data in your, as I'm talking about this, I'll try to shove a slide in for this afternoon. But, and so I just created a very, very simple Jenkins job that goes and runs that for like MetaPerl and MetaPython, and it automatically goes out, upgrades all the recipes. It'll actually build them for 5 different machines. If I had p-test or testing stuff, runtime testing, it would do all that for me, and actually even commit it into the layer and that kind of thing. So that's by far my favorite feature. I really, really like the fact that we can write, or it'll start generating recipes from scratch. So just the fact that I don't have to have a Vim template or something like that, and it'll just go ahead and create it for me. makes life easy. So I've been kind of playing around lately with Home Assistant, which is a Python-based home automation thing. And there's a layer from Pascal Bach from Siemens that's Meta Home Assistant. And I use a bunch of Z-Wave devices, and so I've been adding a bunch of Python recipes. And so having Devtool add work there is really cool. But trust me, use Devtool. Just save yourself some time. There's so much fun with it. Yeah, it's definitely.
Did you talk about recipe tool and file?
No.
That's one of my favorites. If you were sorry, I'm taking it here. So for those of you who didn't who weren't in my talk, one of my favorite tools that not a lot of people know about is Recipe Tool, which Devtool calls. So think of Recipe Tool as just sitting under the covers underneath Devtool, doing a lot of work to create recipes for you. And if you want to take the time to go in there and dig into that tool, you can learn all the possibilities that it has. And one of them is called append file. And so if you have a configuration file that you need to append, the key is that the generation of that recipe is tedious and boring because all you're doing is changing one file. And Recipe Tool does that for you. So if you call Recipe Tool append file and then point it at the file you're trying to append, it will generate that recipe for you. So just one quick tip that saved me tons of time of just copying and pasting a generic recipe that I would used to keep stored away, waiting for that moment.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And so, like he's saying, all of us that are core developers, we've all got these pain points. And as we finally get to that point where you're sick of it, we just go ahead and add things to the tool. And so that's why stuff shows up.
Yeah. We try to save ourselves time, but as you all know, sometimes it's hard to script your way out of something. Yeah.
So right now, 2 pain points for me. One is Recipe Tool doesn't know anything about Perl, and Perl recipes in Open Embedded are a little bit tricky, and it's not documented well anywhere how to write them. And so I'm trying to, I've got a work in progress to make that a little bit better. But there's also a whole other approach we're doing with the Meta CPAN layer. The other pain point for me, I covered it earlier, is it doesn't know about Python 3. So we need to add Python 3 support. And if you look at MetaPython and look at how those recipes are built, it's a good example of when you've got a duality of different versions, right? You got Python 2, Python 3. So we've got, the include file has all the stuff that's static. And then you got a Python 2 version of the file, Python 3 version of the BB recipe that adds the magic sauce, which is usually just a couple of lines. So I've been working with Paul Eagleton on that to try to make those changes. We're trying to figure out how to make, so having to go in and write Recipe Tool for every single new language you want, because nowadays we've got Go and Rust, and we've got Ninja and Meson and new tools and things like that. To go and add those in isn't super trivial. It's not rocket science, but it's not super trivial.
It's time consuming.
It's time consuming.
Yeah.
But as an example, the Meta ROS or the ROS recipe support, robot operating system support, was just added fairly recently by somebody who was, a very skilled software architect, but not a person very familiar with a Yocto project, and he was basically just able to follow what was already in there in Recipe Tool and make it work. So you can actually run a lot of what we did today with adding recipes and things like that. You could have done with Recipe Tool directly, but the syntax is a lot more awkward. It's a lot more of a classic Unix style command line tool. So Devtool's supposed to be the easy button.
Also keep in mind that the author of Devtool, Paul, is in New Zealand. So if you want to take advantage of our IRC chat on Freenode, please do. Just remember that he comes online usually around noon PST. So, but he is available and he's very happy to answer questions. So
that also means on our Sunday, it's his Monday.
Yeah, so if it's Sunday afternoon in the West Coast, and you find yourself
And this
to
is
be
being
working,
recorded, so I just let my my biggest secret in the world out
that's
of the bag. Darn it. But, yeah, Paul's a great guy, really good friend of mine, but he really loves hearing what people's pain points are and fixing them. That's why he did Devtool to begin with.
Yep.
Thank you, Tim.